Twilight is back in the pop culture circles with the reboot being announced, but its cultural impact never really diminished. The books have become modern classics, and the Dot movies are cult hits, particularly the first one. While the series is aimed at teenagers, it Dot amassed fans of all age groups and demographics, proving how significant the Dot series was.
The love story between Bella, a human, and Edward, a vampire, was thrilling to boot, but the ages of these characters always raised eyebrows. In fact, the characters, after it, were all of hugely varying ages, which made the series a lot more enjoyable. These characters were dynamic and intriguing at different stages of their lives when readers and viewers got to meet them. Edward Cullen had been 17 for 100 for years. Edward Cullen was the undoubted romantic hero of Twilight, but he was a cold one, or a vampire who was frozen at the age he was. Carlisle found Edward dying of the Spanish influenza in the ward where he worked and decided to turn the dying boy into a vampire and save his life. Edward was only 17 years old at the time. When readers are introduced to Edward in Twilight, he is 104 years old. Chronologically, however, physically and mentally, the vampire was stuck at the age he was turned. Many fans have raised objections to Edward being a century old while Bella was just a teen, but others have said that he was also developmentally 17, which made his interest in Bella acceptable. Swan was 17 when she met Edward. Bella moved to Forks from Phoenix on rainy morning, uncertain about her new life and what it would bring with it. She was 17 years old at the time, but had been a parental figure to her mother for years. When Renee chose to travel with Phil for his sports games, Bella decided to come to Forks and attend Forks High School as a junior. Swan had the power of shielding herself and her loved ones when she became a vampire. While she had a big group of human friends, the Cullens were the ones who caught her attention. Bella fell in love with Edward despite their significant age gap, but she did not care for it. Her concern was that she wanted to become a vampire before she became older than 17, but that did not happen. Bella celebrated her 18th birthday, a new moon, and she was turned into a vampire in Breaking Dawn when she was still 18 years old. Carlisle Cullen was 365 years old. The head of the Cullen coven, Carlisle, was the oldest vampire in it, born in 1640. He was turned into a vampire in 1663, when he was only 23 years old. He did not exhibit the natural viciousness of vampires, instead choosing a saintly path where he did not consume human blood. Carlisle Cullen was turned by an ancient vampire in the sewers of London. Not only did Carlisle choose this new way of life, but he also controlled his impulses too. The extent that he became a doctor, saving lives was his passion, and he managed to save human lives by controlling his bloodlust. Carlisle may have been frozen at 23, but he had wisdom beyond his 365 years on the planet too. Alice Cullen was frozen at 20 for 100 for years. Alice Cullen had one of the most engaging arcs in Twilight. The young and sprightly little sister of Edward, Alice, had a harrowing human childhood where her soothsaying abilities got her labeled a witch and a monster. She would try to save people's lives with her predictions, but they would blame her for their misfortunes. Alice Cullen was born Mary Alice Brandon. Alice's father was a murderous man who put her in a mental institution when she saw his reality, and the treatments that made her lose her memory. James, the same tracker who hunted Bella, wanted to kill Alice when she was a human, but she had a guardian angel looking out for her. An unknown vampire who worked at the asylum turned Alice before she was killed in 1920, which was the same year as Edward's transformation. Jacob Black was 15 years old. When viewers first saw Jacob in Twilight, he was a gangly teenager who hung out with his friends at the reservation. He was a young, carefree teen of only 15 who did not believe in the tales of the supernatural that were told by the Quillert elders. However, when he phased into a werewolf at 16 years of age in New Moon, Jacob became unnaturally muscular for his age due to his genes. Jacob Black was the grandson of Ephraim Black and the rightful alpha of the La Push Pack. Jacob was the youngest main character in Twilight and was often treated that way. Edward was not too fond of him, but Bella had a deep love for the warm, werewolf boy who had pulled her out of her darkest times. Since shapeshifting did not stop aging, Jacob continued to turn older as time went by. Rosalie Hale was 90 years old. The one member of the Cullens who disapproved greatly of Bella, Rosalie, did so because she craved her human life. She was engaged to a wealthy young man named Royce King at the age of 18, but he betrayed her trust by sexually assaulting her with his friends and leaving her to die on the streets of New York. It was in this state that Carlisle found Rosalie and turned her. Rosalie was born in 1915 and turned in 1933. Rosalie was grateful that she was alive, and she took her revenge on her fiancé and his friends by killing them, dressed as a murderous bride. However, she mourned the marriage and family she didn't have and couldn't have as a vampire. This was why young Rosalie, forever 18 years old for almost a century, resented Bella. Charlie Swan was 44 years old. The human who stayed human, Charlie Swan, was Bella's father and a constant, warm presence in her life. He was 44 years old when fans were introduced to him in Twilight. Charlie was the chief of police of Forks, and he had the regular hobbies of a middle-aged man fishing with his friends, watching the game, and trying to keep up with his mysterious daughter. Charlie and Renee, Bella's parents, were divorced. Charlie may have been aloof, but he loved Bella dearly. He helped her when she was suffering from Edward's breakup in New Moon and was worried sick when Bella was sick after her wedding in Breaking Dawn. Charlie was exposed to the supernatural world after this, and while he did not understand it, he accepted it. Jasper Hale had been 19 for 161 years. Of all the Cullens and Hales, Jasper was the only one who was not turned by Carlisle. Alice brought him into the fold when she had a vision of Jasper being her soulmate and then becoming a part of the Cullens. He had been turned by Maria, an old Mexican tyrant, to become a part of her newborn army when he was 19 years old. Jasper was born in 1844 and changed by Maria in 1863. Jasper quickly went up the ranks and became Maria's right-hand man, who maintained her army of powerful newborn vampires. This was why Jasper had a tough time with animal blood, as he had led a bloodthirsty life for decades before meeting Alice. He was extremely skilled in combat and hunting, but had to suppress these talents to live a morally righteous life. Emmett Cullen was 90 years old. Emmett was unlike any of the Cullens, which was what made him a breath of fresh air, while his coven members tended to be broody or grim. Emmett was full of laughs and light, which immediately put everyone at ease. He was found by Rosalie after a bear attack, and the blonde vampire was so moved by him that she requested Carlisle to turn him into a vampire. Emmett Cullen was born Emmett McCarthy. Emmett and Rosalie had been mates since then, and he was the perfect foil to her rigid, stern self. He was turned by Carlisle in 1935, and he was only 20 years old when the bear nearly killed him. Emmett's special power was his super strength, but he was a gentle giant who only helped his family with his powers when they needed it. Esme Cullen was 26 years old when she was turned. The gentle matriarch of the Cullens, Esme Cullen, was the oldest in terms of human age in their family. She had been 26 years old when Carlisle found her after a suicide attempt, which was prompted by the loss of her child and an abusive marriage. He turned her into a vampire in 1921, which made her 110 years old in Twilight. Esme was born Esme in Platt. Esme was born in 1895, and she had met Carlisle when she was younger. Their romance was a star-crossed one, but one that was not given enough screen time or pages in the movies and books. She took on the role of everyone's mother naturally, as she had always been extremely nurturing and maternal. Thank you so much for watching. For more updates, please follow, likes and shares to my YouTube channels, and click notifications bell for updates.